He didn't run from the storm. He ran from the silence that came after it. A widowed father, a little girl who hadn't spoken since the night the roof collapsed, and a battle-scarred German Shepherd K9 who refused to leave their side. The blizzard took their home. It took their past. It almost took their hope. When the roads vanished beneath snow and the world turned white and merciless, the dog led them somewhere no map remembered, an abandoned military cave buried beneath stone and time, not by accident, not by luck. Inside that forgotten bunker, they found warmth, water, old symbols of soldiers who once stood watch in the dark. But more than shelter, they found purpose. Because some storms don't destroy us, they redirect us. And some places aren't hiding spots. They're foundations waiting for someone brave enough to rebuild. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe hope can rise from the coldest nights, like this video and subscribe for more stories of courage, loyalty, and the quiet guidance that meets us when we think we are alone. The town of Clearwater Ridge sat quietly at the edge of the Bitterroot Mountains, a scatter of wooden houses, a feed store, a small diner with a flickering neon sign, and a church steeple that usually rose steady against Montana's winter sky. On most December mornings, smoke curled gently from chimneys, and trucks groaned awake in driveways crusted with frost. But on this morning the sky was the color of iron, the wind moved low and violent across the valley, and snow did not fall. It attacked. Within hours, Clearwater Ridge disappeared beneath white. Daniel Brooks had always believed he could prepare for anything. 38 years old, 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered with the lean endurance of a former Army Ranger, Daniel carried himself with a posture that suggested discipline had once been carved into him with intention. His dark brown hair was clipped short, though streaks of premature gray threaded near his temples. A short, uneven beard framed a jaw set too tight. His eyes, sharp steel blue, had once scanned foreign terrain for threats. Now they scanned his own collapsing home. When the roof gave way, it did not roar. It cracked, a sharp, splitting sound swallowed by the storm's howl. Daniel had been in the hallway. His wife, Emily Brooks, a warm, steady woman of 34 with chestnut hair and soft hazel eyes that always seemed to hold patience, had been in the kitchen. She had the kind of presence that calmed arguments before they formed, the kind of laugh that made small-town gatherings feel larger than they were. The beam fell before Daniel reached her. Snow poured in, wood splintered, and then the house filled with a silence no storm could match. Atlas was already moving. Atlas, a 7-year-old German Shepherd K9, large and powerfully built, chicked with a thick sable coat darkened along his back and a lighter tan underbelly, had served 2 overseas deployments beside Daniel. A faint scar cut through the fur above his right shoulder, and one ear carried a small notch from shrapnel years ago. His amber eyes were steady, intelligent, trained not just to react, but to decide. He barked once, sharp and commanding. Daniel did not remember crossing the room. He only remembered the weight of snow and debris and the sound of his daughter's coughing. Lily Brooks, 8 years old, small for her age, thin, pale, with long, light brown hair usually worn in 2 uneven braids her mother tied each morning. Her gray-green eyes, so much like Emily's, were wide now, but silent. Daniel pulled her free from the hallway corner where she had curled instinctively. "Lily, look at me." She did. She did not speak. The power failed before sunrise. By mid-morning, every road out of Clearwater Ridge was buried. Snowplows stalled. Cell towers went down. The emergency siren sounded once, then died. Daniel wrapped Lily in his thick field jacket and moved what supplies he could salvage into the truck, but the engine would not turn. The cold had seized it. Atlas paced between them, circling, checking, pressing his shoulder briefly against Lily's leg before returning to Daniel. The sheriff's deputy, a stocky man named Carl Jensen, red-faced from windburn and panic, pounded on doors in the neighborhood shouting evacuation orders that came too late. Carl had always been loud, always overly confident in town meetings, but now his voice cracked. "Anyone who can move, head toward the highway shelter." Daniel looked toward the highway. It was already invisible. Highway shelter meant a high school gym 20 miles south. 20 miles might as well have been 200. He knew the mountains better than the roads. Years ago, During survival training exercises, he had navigated snowfields above Bitterroot Ridge on foot with less gear than he carried now. The mountains were brutal, but predictable. Roads were traps when snow erased them. He knelt in front of Lily. "We're going up," he said gently. "Remember what I taught you?" No answer. Her lips parted slightly. Nothing came. Atlas stepped between them, tail low but not tucked, body angled as if forming a physical bridge. Daniel swallowed. "I'm sorry," he whispered, not sure whether he spoke to Lily, to Emily, or to the storm itself. He should have fixed the roof in October. The leak had been small. The contractor had been busy. He had postponed. A soldier calculates risks. A husband delays repairs. The math had cost him everything. They left Clearwater Ridge just before noon. The wind hit like a wall. Snow moved sideways, filling footprints seconds after they formed. The town's feed store sign tore loose and vanished in white. Atlas took point immediately, moving 10 feet ahead, then circling back. His nose skimmed the surface, searching for variations in scent beneath layers of cold. Daniel carried Lily part of the way, though she insisted weakly on walking when the path steepened. Her small boots sank too deep. Halfway up a low incline, Atlas froze. His ears snapped forward, his body stiffened. He lunged sideways just as Lily stepped forward. The ground collapsed. A hollow pocket beneath the snow gave way into a narrow sinkhole where wind had carved a void around a fallen fence post. Lily's left leg slipped in. Atlas grabbed her coat sleeve gently but firmly, bracing backward with all his weight. Daniel dropped to his knees and pulled her free. The hole swallowed snow again as if nothing had happened. Lily stared at Atlas. Her fingers tightened in his fur. Still no words, but her breathing slowed. The higher they climbed, the more the town vanished. Daniel's lungs burned. His gloves stiffened with ice. He forced himself to slow his pace, to think like a ranger, not a panicked father. "Read the wind," he had once told Lily during a camping trip. They had stood on a ridge at sunset. Emily had laughed below them, pretending to be offended when Lily chose to stay with her father instead of helping cook dinner. "What does the snow tell you?" he had asked Lily then. "It's coming from the west," she had answered proudly. Now the wind came from everywhere. Daniel adjusted direction slightly, angling toward a line of darker rock formations he barely remembered from training maps. Atlas approved. The dog moved in deliberate arcs, always returning to brush against Lily's leg before surging ahead again. He did not allow space between them. He did not allow despair to settle. By late afternoon, visibility dropped to less than 20 feet. Daniel found partial cover behind a broken pine tree and forced Lily to drink melted snow from his canteen lid. Her hands trembled. Her cheeks were too pale. He pressed his forehead briefly to hers. "Stay with me, kiddo." She blinked slowly. Atlas lay against her side, sharing warmth. Daniel looked back once toward where Clearwater Ridge should have been. There was nothing. No rooftops, no smoke, no church steeple. The town was gone beneath white. The storm had not just swallowed buildings, it had swallowed the life he had known. He exhaled and turned toward the mountain. They would not survive by morning. They would survive by moving. When they resumed climbing, Daniel noticed something subtle in Atlas's posture. The dog's head tilted slightly left. His gait shifted. He had caught something. A scent carried through layers of snow and stone. Atlas barked once, not in alarm but in direction. Daniel followed. The land ahead rose into a darker wall of rock partially shielded from the wind. The snow drifted heavily against it, forming unnatural curves. Atlas leapt forward, paws digging furiously at a section where snow packed differently. A hollow sound answered. Daniel dropped beside him and cleared snow with his gloved hands. Beneath the drift lay a narrow, shadowed opening cut into limestone. Not natural erosion. Carved. Old. Atlas turned, eyes bright despite exhaustion. Lily stepped closer, silent but watching. The wind screamed behind them. The dark opening waited ahead. Daniel felt something unfamiliar in his chest, not relief, not yet, but possibility. He swallowed hard and looked at his daughter. "We go inside," he said quietly. Lily nodded once. Atlas moved first into the darkness, and Daniel followed. The wind died the moment they stepped inside. Not completely, it still howled somewhere beyond the stone, but the violence dulled, as if the mountain itself had taken a breath and decided to hold it for them. Snow swirled once at the entrance and then dropped straight down, defeated. Daniel stood just inside the narrow opening, letting his eyes adjust. The air was cold but steady, without the cutting edge of the storm. The limestone walls curved inward at an angle that turned the wind aside rather than fighting it. He recognized the design immediately. Not natural erosion alone. This had been shaped, reinforced. Atlas moved first. The German Shepherd advanced low and controlled, paws silent against stone, nose sweeping in disciplined arcs. His ears remained high, his body rigid with purpose. Yet he did not relax simply because they were indoors. Shelter meant nothing until it was cleared. Easy, Daniel murmured, though the word was more habit than instruction. Atlas did not need it. The entrance corridor angled sharply to the right, blocking direct wind. After 10 yards, it widened into a larger chamber. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. He knew this shape. He had seen bunkers carved into rock during training exercises in Alaska and once in Eastern Europe. The faint outline of metal caught the beam of his flashlight. A rusted iron bed frame leaned against the wall, its springs sagging and brittle. Nearby, a second frame lay collapsed beneath a drift of ancient dust. The floor bore faint scuff marks, long frozen in time. This was no hunter's shelter. This had been built with intention. Daniel stepped forward slowly, boots scraping over stone. On the far wall, half obscured by mineral deposits, he saw faded lettering stenciled in black. U.S. Army, 1962. Below it, a serial code barely legible. Cold War era. A forward observation outpost, most likely, hidden above the valley to monitor movement along the passes. Atlas circled the chamber once, then twice. He paused near a dark recess and gave a low rumble. Daniel lifted the light. Empty. Just shadow and old rock. Atlas's tail remained level. He moved on. Lily stepped inside last. She hesitated at the threshold, her small gloved hand resting briefly against the stone as if testing whether it would reject her. Her pale face glowed in the flashlight beam. Snow clung to her braids. She did not shiver. Not because she wasn't cold, but because shock still held her body tight. Daniel knelt in front of her. "It's safe," he said quietly. She looked past him, eyes tracing the rusted beds, the markings, the carved ceiling. Something flickered there. Curiosity. Faint, but alive. Atlas positioned himself between them and the deeper corridor without being told. Daniel moved methodically through the chamber, clearing it the way he had cleared buildings overseas. Left wall, right wall, ceiling angles, blind corners. His breathing slowed into old rhythms. Muscle memory returned like an old companion. He found a second room beyond a narrow arch of stone. This one smaller, more functional. Against the back wall sat a row of metal shelves collapsed inward, their contents long decayed. Tin cans split open, labels rotted beyond reading. A wooden crate crumbled at his touch. He crouched and brushed away dust from a heavy steel door embedded into the wall. It no longer opened, hinges fused by rust. Likely once a supply locker or radio room. Daniel exhaled slowly. Whoever had been stationed here had not meant for it to be temporary. The ceiling rose higher toward the center of the main chamber. Above, faint light filtered through a narrow vertical fissure, a natural chimney carved upward through stone. Snow had not sealed it. Air moved gently there, enough to carry smoke. Ventilation. Designed or discovered, it didn't matter. It worked. Atlas returned to Daniel's side, pressing briefly against his thigh. His breathing had steadied. He had found no threat. Still, he did not lie down. Not yet. Lily drifted toward the wall with the faded lettering. She reached out, brushing her fingers over the black stenciled numbers. Beneath the marking, partly hidden by mineral streaks, someone had scratched initials into the stone decades ago. TH. Her eyes followed the letters. Then she spotted something half buried near the rusted shelves. A small metal box. She knelt and tugged at it carefully. The hinges protested but gave way. Inside lay a tarnished military insignia, crossed rifles beneath a small eagle, and a folded scrap of fabric, brittle but intact. A patch. Daniel stepped beside her. She held the insignia in both hands, studying it with solemn intensity. "They stayed here," she whispered. The first word she had spoken since the house collapsed. Daniel felt the sound hit him harder than the wind ever had. Yes, he said softly. "They did." Lily traced the eagle with her thumb. "Were they scared?" He considered the question. "Probably," he answered honestly. "But they stayed anyway." She nodded once, as if filing that away. Atlas finally lowered himself to the stone floor beside her, though his head remained lifted, eyes tracking every movement. His posture communicated something simple. This space was acceptable, but still under watch. Daniel stood and walked toward the entrance again, studying the slope and drift outside. The angle of the bluff shielded them from direct wind. Snow piled heavily near the opening, but not inside. With reinforcement, this entrance could be controlled. His gaze returned to the chimney fissure overhead. If he built a small hearth below it, smoke would draw upward. The chamber's natural curve would retain heat. He turned slowly in a full circle, evaluating. Dry stone, elevated floor, 2 rooms, ventilation, defensible entrance. Not comfort, but survivable. Behind him, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor beside the old metal box, arranging the insignia and patch as if setting them in a place of honor. She looked smaller in the vastness of the chamber, yet somehow steadier. Daniel's mind drifted backward, not to war, but to training grounds in Wyoming, where he had once taught younger recruits how to establish winter shelter under rock formations. He remembered the satisfaction of competence, of knowing where to place fire, how to conserve heat, how to read stone-like terrain. He had lost many things in Clearwater Ridge, but not that. Atlas rose abruptly and trotted deeper into the corridor again. Daniel followed immediately. The dog stopped near a secondary bend Daniel had nearly missed. Beyond it lay a narrow side chamber, empty but dry. No animal droppings, no nests, no fresh tracks. Atlas sniffed thoroughly, then turned and met Daniel's gaze. His tail gave one measured sweep, clear. Yet only then did Atlas return to the main chamber and settle fully, lowering his head onto his paws for the first time since they entered. Daniel understood the message. The space had been claimed, not by dominance, but by evaluation. He crouched beside Lily and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "This used to protect soldiers," he said quietly. "Now it protects us." Lily looked around again, slower this time. Her breathing had evened. The storm outside continued its assault, but inside the cave the air remained still. For the first time since the roof collapsed, Daniel did not feel exposed. He felt positioned. The difference mattered. He stood and began clearing debris from one corner of the chamber, dragging the least corroded bed frame aside to create space. Atlas watched but did not interfere. Outside, the wind intensified again, hurling itself uselessly against stone. Inside, the mountain held. Daniel glanced once more at the faded army stencil. Men had once stood watch here for dangers that never came. Tonight the danger was real, and it had been turned aside by rock and chance and instinct. He looked at Lily. "We'll stay," he said simply. She nodded. Atlas's eyes closed halfway, not in sleep, but in guarded approval, and the storm raged on outside, unable to reach them. The storm did not weaken overnight. It pressed against the bluff with steady violence, snow sealing the entrance in thicker drifts, the world outside reduced to a white roar. Inside, the cave held its shape. The air remained still, the temperature tolerable compared to the killing wind beyond the stone. Daniel had built a small controlled fire beneath the vertical fissure, testing the chimney's draw. Smoke rose cleanly, thinning as it disappeared into the narrow shaft overhead. The design worked. The men who had carved this place had understood winter. Morning inside the cave arrived not with sunlight but with a soft gray glow filtering down the rock walls. Lily slept curled beneath Daniel's spare thermal blanket, Atlas positioned near the entrance corridor, body angled defensively even in rest. His amber eyes opened the moment Daniel shifted. Vigilance had become instinct long before this storm. Daniel stood and stretched slowly, stiffness reminding him he was no longer 25. He scanned the chamber again, noting something he had missed the night before. A faint draft not from the main fissure, but from deeper within the rock. It was subtle, a current of colder air brushing the back of his neck. He turned toward the secondary bend Atlas had cleared the previous evening. "Stay here," he said quietly to Lily. She watched him, but did not protest. Her eyes had more focus now, less vacancy. Atlas rose immediately and followed Daniel into the narrow passage. The floor sloped downward almost imperceptibly. 10 feet in, the corridor tightened before widening again into a low chamber partially concealed by fallen stones. Daniel crouched and swept his flashlight across the walls. Metal glinted beneath mineral buildup. Then he pushed aside loose debris and uncovered a rectangular steel frame embedded into the rock. Not a door this time, but a reinforced access panel left ajar. Beyond it, a small utility room opened, astonishingly intact compared to the rest of the outpost. A manual filtration system sat along one wall. Gravity-fed ceramic filters stacked in rusted casings, pipes leading downward through drilled limestone. A cracked label still clung to the side. Potable water. Field unit. Daniel's pulse steadied into something close to awe. He followed the pipe with his light and saw where it disappeared through the floor into darkness. The sound reached him then, faint but unmistakable. The gentle movement of water. An underground spring. Atlas moved forward, nose lifting slightly, ears twitching at the sound. He did not bark. He assessed. Daniel tested one of the valves carefully. It resisted at first, then shifted with a metallic groan. A thin stream of water trickled into a shallow basin carved into the stone below. It ran cloudy for several seconds, then began to clear. He cupped his gloved hand beneath it. Cold, clean-smelling, not stagnant. The system had not been maintained in decades, but it had not failed entirely. The spring had kept moving beneath the rock. Daniel felt something shift inside him. Not relief, not yet, but possibility layered on top of survival. Shelter was one thing. Water changed everything. He dismantled part of the casing carefully, clearing mineral buildup from the ceramic filters, flushing debris through the pipe. He moved with the calm efficiency of someone who had rebuilt field purifiers under worse conditions overseas. Muscle memory returned easily. He adjusted flow, tested clarity again, waited. The water ran steady. Atlas drank briefly, then stepped back as if acknowledging approval. Daniel filled his metal cup and returned to the main chamber. Lily sat upright now, knees tucked beneath her chin. She looked up when he entered. Listen, he said softly. He poured water into the cup. The sound echoed gently in the chamber. Her head tilted. There's a spring under us. She rose slowly and followed him back through the narrow passage. When she saw the thin stream flowing into the basin, her eyes widened, not dramatically, but with quiet recognition of what it meant. Is it safe? She asked. It will be, Daniel answered. She knelt beside the basin and touched the surface with one finger. The cold made her flinch, but she did not pull away. For the first time since the house collapsed, Daniel saw something resembling curiosity rather than shock. They worked together to clear the area, stacking loose stones into a low barrier so water would not spread across the floor. Daniel explained each step as he went, not because she needed technical detail, but because routine anchored the mind. This filter catches sediment. This valve controls flow. See the angle? That's so gravity does the work. She nodded, absorbing it. Did the soldiers use this? Yes. Did they get lonely? He paused at that. Probably, he said, but they had a job. Lily studied the running water for a long moment. What's ours? The question settled into him heavier than the stone above their heads. He had thought only about staying alive, but the outpost was more than a hiding place. It had been built to serve a purpose beyond its occupants. Atlas shifted suddenly and moved back toward the entrance corridor. His posture changed. Alert, but not aggressive. He disappeared into the outer chamber. Daniel followed quickly. Snow had packed higher near the entrance. A faint scratching sound carried through the drift. Atlas pawed carefully at the base of the opening. Beneath the snow lay a small form struggling weakly. A snowshoe hare, barely larger than Lily's forearm, its white winter coat blending nearly perfectly with the drift. One hind leg was trapped beneath a thin crust of ice. Yet the animal trembled violently, dark eyes wide with terror. Atlas did not bite. He nudged gently, controlled, waiting for Daniel. Daniel knelt and freed the leg carefully. It was not broken, just numbed by cold. The hare attempted to bolt but collapsed a few feet away. Lily stepped closer, her breath visible in the cold draft. Can we help it? She asked. Daniel hesitated only briefly. Survival taught efficiency, but this was not a moment for harsh calculation. We can try. They carried the hare inside, placing it near the warmth of the fire but not too close. Lily removed her gloves and rubbed the animal's hind leg gently, whispering to it in a soft, steady voice. Her tone reminded Daniel painfully of Emily. Atlas lay nearby, watching with focused restraint. The dog had the strength to kill easily, yet he remained still. Over the next hour, warmth returned gradually to the hare's muscles. It twitched, then lifted its head. Lily smiled, small, cautious, but real. It's scared, she murmured. So are we, Daniel replied quietly. The hare eventually found enough strength to stand. It limped once, then steadied. Daniel carried it back toward the entrance and released it into a sheltered pocket of snow beside the bluff where wind did not strike directly. The animal vanished into white almost instantly. Lily watched until it disappeared. It didn't die, she said. No, Daniel answered. Back inside, the cave felt different. not just survivable, purposeful. Daniel sat near the filtration system later that afternoon, listening to the steady trickle of the spring. Water, shelter, ventilation, defensible entrance. He imagined reinforcing the corridor with stone, building organized sleeping platforms, establishing a proper hearth, stockpiling dry wood. Not just for them, for anyone caught in storms like this one. Clearwater Ridge would rebuild eventually. But winter would return every year. Roads would vanish again. People would get trapped. This place had once guarded against foreign threats that never arrived. Perhaps its purpose had shifted. Lily sat beside him. "Does Mom know we're safe?" she asked suddenly. The question struck deeper than any memory of collapsing beams. Daniel swallowed. His voice, when it came, was steady but low. "I think she'd want us to be." Lily leaned her head against his arm. "She liked when you fixed things." He almost laughed, a short, fractured sound. "I remember." He looked at the water flowing steadily beneath the stone. "I can fix this," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. Atlas rested his chin on Daniel's knee, eyes calm. The dog did not understand the words, but he understood the shift. Survival was no longer the only objective. Daniel did not declare plans aloud. He did not outline blueprints, but the idea formed clearly in his mind. If restored properly, this cave could become a winter haven, a place where no one would have to choose between roads buried in snow and death by exposure. For now, they would focus on stabilizing what they had, but the seed had been planted. The spring continued to run beneath the stone, steady and patient. The storm did not end all at once. It weakened in waves, retreating only to surge again, as if reluctant to surrender the valley. 3 days after restoring the spring, Daniel had established rhythm inside the cave. The filtration system ran steady. Firewood was stacked in a dry alcove. The entrance had been reinforced with a low stone wall angled against the wind. Survival had become structured. That was when Atlas barked. Not the short directional bark Daniel had learned to interpret as movement. This was sharp, repeated, urgent but not frantic. Daniel rose immediately, rifle within reach but not raised. Lily looked up from the small arrangement of stones she had been stacking near the fire. Atlas stood at the entrance corridor, muscles coiled, head tilted slightly to catch sound beyond stone. Daniel moved beside him and listened. At first only wind, then something else. A broken rhythm in the white noise, footsteps uneven and dragging. Daniel stepped out into the snow, keeping low behind the bluff's natural shield. Visibility had improved compared to the first night, but wind still carried snow and shifting curtains. 3 figures emerged slowly from the white. The first was a tall woman in her early 30s, wrapped in a dark parka that had once been navy blue but now carried a crust of frost. She moved with determination rather than panic, shoulders squared despite exhaustion. Her name, Daniel would soon learn, was Sarah Collins. She stood nearly 5'9", lean and athletic in build, with sun-browned skin and sharp green eyes that scanned terrain with practiced awareness. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight braid that had partially come undone. There was no hysteria in her posture, only calculation. Years earlier, she had worked as a backcountry search and rescue volunteer in Idaho before returning to Montana to care for her father after a logging accident left him partially disabled. Responsibility had shaped her into someone who did not wait to be rescued. Beside her stumbled a man slightly older, mid-30s, broad-shouldered but softer around the middle, his beard rimmed with frost. Mark Collins, Sarah's husband. He wore glasses beneath fogged lenses and carried himself like someone more accustomed to books than blizzards. A high school history teacher in Clearwater Ridge, Mark had insisted on helping neighbors before evacuating, costing them precious hours. His kindness had nearly trapped them. Between them walked a boy about Lily's age, 8, maybe 9. Narrow-faced, pale beneath windburn, with sandy hair plastered flat by snow. His name was Caleb Collins. He held tightly to his mother's sleeve but forced himself to keep pace. His boots were too thin for mountain terrain. His jaw trembled, but he did not cry. Atlas stepped forward into view, posture tall but controlled. He did not charge. He assessed. Sarah saw him first and stopped instinctively. Her hand moved protectively toward Caleb's shoulder. "It's okay," Daniel called out, keeping his voice steady. "He won't rush you." Sarah's eyes shifted to Daniel, measuring him in a single glance. His stance, the rifle slung but not aimed, the way he positioned himself between the cave and her family. "You alone?" she asked, voice strained but firm. "With my daughter." A gust of wind nearly knocked Caleb sideways. Mark steadied him. Daniel hesitated only a second longer. The cave was defensible. Resources limited. But the filtration system flowed. The space was larger than necessary for three. "Come inside," he said finally. Atlas stepped aside, though his gaze remained fixed on the newcomers. Inside the cave, warmth and stillness enveloped them immediately. Mark sagged visibly with relief. Sarah did not. Yet she scanned the chamber just as Daniel had days earlier, noting structure, exits, smoke ventilation. "You built this?" she asked quietly. "Repaired it," Daniel answered. Caleb spotted Lily near the fire. She watched him with cautious curiosity. He stared back, unsure whether to approach. Sarah removed her gloves and flexed her stiff fingers. Her hands were calloused, not delicate, but capable. "We tried the highway," she explained. "Road vanished. We saw rock and hoped." Mark exhaled shakily. "You might have saved us." Daniel shook his head. "The rock did." Atlas circled once around the family, nose working carefully. He stopped briefly in front of Caleb. The boy froze, wide-eyed. Atlas leaned forward and sniffed the air near the boy's mitten, then stepped back. Approval given. Lily rose slowly and walked toward Caleb. She extended a small hand. "I'm Lily." Caleb swallowed. Caleb. The simplicity of it eased something in the chamber. Over the next hours, yes, the cave shifted from solitary refuge to shared shelter. Sarah insisted on helping immediately, stacking additional stones near the entrance barrier. Mark cleared debris from the side alcove, organizing space efficiently despite fatigue. He had the mind of a teacher, systematic, patient, and quickly began cataloging supplies on a scrap of paper pulled from his jacket pocket. Daniel watched the transformation unfold with quiet awareness. He had intended only to survive. Now he found himself explaining airflow patterns, delegating tasks, pointing out safe storage areas. The role settled onto him without ceremony. Late that evening, Atlas stiffened again. Another sound carried through the wind, weaker this time. Daniel stepped outside cautiously. A lone figure approached slowly, leaning heavily on a wooden walking stick. The man was in his late 70s, thin but upright, his posture defined by stubborn resilience rather than strength. Yet his gray beard was neatly trimmed despite the storm, and his pale blue eyes remained clear and alert beneath a worn wool cap. He introduced himself simply as Harold Whitaker. Harold's face changed the moment he stepped inside and saw the faded army stencil on the wall. "I know this place," he said softly, voice thickened not by cold but memory. "I was stationed here in '63. Daniel studied him carefully. Harold's hands trembled slightly, not from fear but age. He had the look of a man who had lived long with quiet discipline, the kind shaped by early military service and decades of rural life afterward. After leaving the army, he had become a mechanic in Clearwater Ridge, known for fixing engines others declared dead. His wife had passed years ago. He had remained in town because he did not know how to leave it. Harold stepped closer to the wall, touching the faded stencil. "We watched the passes," he murmured. "Thought we'd see the Russians coming over those ridges." A faint smile tugged at his lips. Never did." He pointed to the scratched initials Lily had found. "T.H., that was Thomas Hale, my bunkmate." The cave seemed to shift under the weight of his recognition. It was no longer abandoned. It had memory. Daniel welcomed him in without hesitation. By the second night, the cave held 6 souls and 1 vigilant German shepherd. The filtration system sustained them. The fire burned steady. Sarah and Daniel reinforced the entrance further using fallen rock from the bluff's edge. Mark repaired a damaged battery-powered radio unit Harold had carried in his pack, a relic from his garage workshop. The signal was weak at first, but by adjusting antenna wire and positioning it near the fissure vent, Mark caught intermittent emergency broadcasts. He transmitted back cautiously. Within hours, fragmented replies returned. Stranded hikers, a rancher with a stalled snowmobile, a woman sheltering in her truck near the valley bend. Word spread. Daniel hesitated when Mark suggested giving their position coordinates. The instinct to protect scarce resources lingered. But he looked around at the chamber, at Harold tracing memories in stone, at Sarah organizing sleeping arrangements, at Lily and Caleb sitting cross-legged near the fire comparing stories about school before the storm. This place had not been carved for isolation. He keyed the radio and gave directions. Atlas lay near the entrance, eyes half closed but ears tuned outward. He had shifted subtly in these days. He no longer guarded only Daniel and Lily. His watch extended to all inside. As more static-laced voices responded, Daniel felt the shift within himself complete. He was no longer a man hiding from loss. He was coordinating, assessing, preparing space. Survivor had become steward. The cave, once a forgotten outpost, had begun to breathe with human presence again. And outside, though the storm still lingered, its power felt diminished against stone reinforced not just by rock, but by purpose. The storm did not end in triumph. It faded. Over the course of 3 days, the wind loosened its grip on the valley. Snow no longer flew sideways. It fell gently, then stopped altogether. The sky lightened to a pale, brittle blue that seemed almost fragile after so much gray. From the cave entrance, Daniel could see farther than he had since the night his roof collapsed. The valley below lay buried, but recognizable. Pine tops emerged from white drifts. The outline of Clearwater Ridge flickered faintly in the distance, smoke rising in thin threads where generators had been restored. Inside the cave, the change was more profound. What had begun as shelter had evolved into structure. The filtration system ran reliably. Thus, the stone windbreak near the entrance had been reinforced with additional slabs Sarah and Daniel pried from the bluff's edge. Sleeping areas were defined by low-stacked walls for privacy and insulation. Mark had organized supplies into a temporary pantry, labeling salvaged cans with charcoal markings. A proper hearth had been shaped beneath the chimney fissure, drawing smoke efficiently upward. The cave no longer felt like a desperate solution. It felt intentional. The county rescue teams arrived mid-morning on the 4th clear day. Their snowmobiles echoed up the valley before they appeared in view. 2 deputies and a volunteer medic approached cautiously, guided by the coordinates Mark had transmitted earlier. Deputy Carl Jensen stepped inside first, helmet tucked beneath his arm. He looked older than Daniel remembered from town meetings. Windburn had deepened the lines around his mouth. He surveyed the chamber in stunned silence. "You've got half the missing list in here," Carl said quietly. Behind him stood Dr. Amelia Reyes, a volunteer physician from the neighboring county. She was in her early 40s, petite but composed, with dark curls tucked beneath a wool cap and intelligent brown eyes that moved efficiently from person to person, assessing health without fuss. Years working in rural clinics had sharpened her into someone who balanced empathy with practicality. She examined Harold's circulation, checked Caleb's mild frostbite, and praised Daniel's water filtration system with professional approval. "You built this?" she asked. "Repaired what was already here," Daniel replied. Carl shifted his weight. "Road crews are clearing the lower passes. Town's stabilizing. We can escort everyone back tomorrow." The words hung in the chamber like an invitation. Back. Daniel glanced around the cave. Sarah stood near the hearth, arms crossed loosely, watching him rather than Carl. Mark folded his inventory paper slowly, waiting. Lily sat cross-legged near the wall, sketching in a small notebook Mark had found in his pack. Caleb leaned beside her, offering suggestions and whispers. Atlas lay near the entrance, eyes alert but calm. Back meant debris, insurance claims, empty rooms. Back meant standing in front of what was left of his house and confronting absence. That night, after the rescue team departed to retrieve others from the valley, Daniel walked alone to the entrance. Snow glittered beneath moonlight, deceptively peaceful. Atlas followed at a short distance, as he always did. "You'd go back," Daniel murmured to the dog. "You'd follow me anywhere." Atlas sat beside him, breath steady in the cold air. Inside the cave, laughter rose faintly. Caleb telling Lily about how his class once built a cardboard fort that collapsed during a spelling bee. Lily's voice joined his, soft but unmistakably alive. And Daniel felt the contrast between then and now press against him. The house in Clearwater Ridge had been wood and drywall. This place was stone and purpose. He stepped back inside. The next morning, Carl returned with snowmobiles ready for departure. Families gathered their belongings slowly. Sarah approached Daniel near the filtration chamber. "You don't look ready," she said plainly. Daniel studied the running water. "Town will rebuild." "And this?" she asked, gesturing around them. He hesitated. Sarah's expression softened. Responsibility had carved its lines into her face long before this storm. "Search and rescue teams can't be everywhere when the first snow hits," she said. "But this place, it's already here." Mark joined them quietly. "We could organize it," he added. "Seasonal checks, supply rotations." Harold shuffled closer, leaning on his wooden cane. The old man's blue eyes shone in the filtered light. In his hands he carried the tarnished insignia Lily had found days earlier. I carried this out of here once," Harold said slowly, "when they shut the outpost down. Figured it was the end of its story." He held the insignia out to Daniel. "Turns out I was wrong." Daniel did not take it immediately. Harold's voice steadied. "This place was built to guard against enemies we never saw. Now it guards against something real. Cold doesn't negotiate, it doesn't care, but stone holds." He pressed the insignia into Daniel's hand. "It protected the country once. Now it protects people." Silence settled. Lily approached, holding her notebook. She turned it toward Daniel. On the page she had drawn the outline of the cave interior, the hearth, the sleeping areas, the filtration pipe, and above the entrance she had written in careful block letters, "Our new house." Daniel felt something align inside him, not with force, but with clarity. He walked to the center of the chamber. The others watched quietly. "This doesn't replace town," he said at last. "Oh, but it doesn't have to." He glanced toward the entrance, then back at the filtration system, the reinforced windbreak, the organized supplies. "Storms will come again." Mark nodded slowly. Sarah's posture shifted, not relief, but recognition. Daniel inhaled deeply. "We keep it ready. We maintain it, not just for us." "For anyone," Lily added softly. The name came almost naturally. "Bitterroot Winter Haven," Daniel said. The words echoed gently against stone. Harold smiled, a quiet, satisfied curve of weathered lips. "Has a ring to it." Caleb approached Atlas cautiously, kneeling beside the dog. "You're like a guardian," he said. The word caught on. Within minutes, Lily and Caleb were repeating it. "Guardian. The guardian of the haven." Atlas tilted his head slightly but remained still, accepting the title without understanding it. Carl removed his gloves slowly. "So, you're staying?" Daniel met his gaze steadily. "Yes." The deputy nodded once, not surprised. "Then we'll register it." Official emergency shelter. County can help with basic supply drops once roads clear." Dr. Reyes smiled approvingly. "You've already done the hard part." That afternoon, some families chose to return to town. Others volunteered to assist in maintaining the cave. Mark committed to organizing a rotating supply list. Sarah offered to coordinate winter readiness checks using her old search and rescue contacts. As the snowmobiles departed with those heading back, Daniel stood at the entrance watching the valley glow under pale winter sun. The storm had taken much from him, but it had also revealed something beneath loss, a foundation that did not splinter under pressure. He turned back into the chamber. The hearth crackled softly. Lily and Caleb rearranged stones near the sleeping alcove, debating where future bunks might go. Harold sat near the wall, tracing the old stencil with gentle reverence. Daniel pinned the tarnished insignia carefully above the filtration system, not as decoration. As reminder, this was no longer a forgotten outpost. It was Bitterroot Winter Haven. And he was not leaving. Winter returned the way it always had in Bitterroot Valley. Not with surprise, but with certainty. The first snow came in late November, soft and almost beautiful, dusting rooftops and pine branches in quiet white. But no one in Clearwater Ridge mistook beauty for mercy anymore. The memory of the previous year lingered in every conversation at the feed store, in every reinforced roof beam, in every emergency supply kit stacked beside back doors. And above the valley, carved into limestone beneath the bluff, Bitterroot Winter Haven waited. It no longer resembled the forgotten Cold War outpost Daniel had first entered with numb fingers and a broken heart. The entrance corridor had been reinforced with a timber frame hauled up during summer, bolted into stone with anchor pins donated by the county. Solar panels, modest but reliable, had been installed along a cleared patch near the bluff's upper edge, angled carefully to catch winter light. Inside, a small backup generator, old but functional, sat housed in a ventilated side chamber Mark had helped soundproof with salvaged insulation. The filtration system ran cleaner than ever. A proper pantry lined the wall where rusted shelves once sagged. Bunks, built from reclaimed lumber, stood organized along the main chamber, each with wool blankets sealed in waterproof bins. A chalkboard near the entrance listed emergency procedures in neat handwriting. Daniel had written most of it. He stood near the hearth now, watching as a small group of volunteers practiced assembling portable cots. Sarah Collins led the exercise with calm authority. A year had sharpened her leadership further. She wore a heavy flannel over a thermal shirt, braids still tight against her back, posture confident but never domineering. After the storm last year, and she had formally joined the county's Emergency Preparedness Board. Responsibility suited her. She had long ago learned that waiting for help was less reliable than becoming it. Mark adjusted the radio console near the filtration chamber, glasses reflecting the steady glow of indicator lights. The makeshift antenna system had been replaced with a proper mounted relay. He had studied communications manuals all summer, determined to ensure no signal would be missed this winter. Harold Whitaker sat near the wall beneath the old 1962 stencil, hands folded over his cane. He was slower now, but no less present. He had insisted on climbing the bluff at least once a week throughout autumn to check structural supports, refusing to let age excuse him from usefulness. Lily moved between stations with a clipboard nearly as large as her torso. She was 9 now. Her hair, once dull with shock, shone again under the cave's warm lighting. Her laughter, light, unguarded, echoed naturally against stone. She recorded names as volunteers rotated through drills, correcting spelling with surprising seriousness. Atlas lay near the entrance, larger somehow in presence than in body. His sable coat had thickened for winter, silver beginning to touch his muzzle now that he was 8. Children still called him Guardian, and the name had settled into his identity. He no longer carried only vigilance. He carried familiarity. When the second storm of the season was forecast, no one panicked. Radios crackled across town with calm coordination. Emergency kits were packed before wind ever rose. By late afternoon, the sky darkened to that same iron gray Daniel remembered too well. Snow began in thin sheets, then thickened rapidly. By nightfall, headlights cut through white along the narrow access path toward the bluff. Snowmobiles arrived first, followed by trucks that could manage the lower incline before chains gave up. Families unloaded supplies efficiently, guided by lantern light. Lily stood near the entrance table, pencil poised. "Name?" she asked each arrival, voice steady and official. "For those who walk through storms," Harold murmured approvingly as he watched the board fill. The first real test came just after midnight. A call broke through the radio, fragmented, urgent. 2 hikers had attempted to cross a ridge trail earlier that afternoon before weather worsened unexpectedly. Their signal faded in and out, coordinates uncertain but roughly northeast of the valley bend. Daniel did not hesitate. Atlas was already standing. Sarah approached him, pulling on insulated gloves. "You sure?" Daniel nodded once. "We've trained for this." They had. All autumn, Daniel had organized search drills. He had taught volunteers how to read wind patterns, how to spot snow depressions indicating voids beneath drifts, and how to move in formation without losing sight lines. Atlas had been central to every exercise. Now the training would matter. Daniel, Atlas, and 2 younger volunteers, brothers named Ethan and Lucas Miller, early 20s, farm-raised and strong but respectful of instruction, secured headlamps and rescue harnesses. Ethan, taller and broad-chested, carried a calm focus shaped by years of livestock management in harsh winters. Lucas, leaner and quicker, had the restless energy of youth but listened carefully when Daniel spoke. Snow struck immediately upon exiting the cave. Wind roared, though not with the unrelenting fury of the previous year's catastrophe. Still, it was enough to disorient the unprepared. Atlas took point without command. His body moved low and deliberate, nose testing currents of air invisible to human senses. Daniel trusted him entirely. They moved in staggered formation, Daniel keeping visual contact with the volunteers behind him. His snow reached mid-calf in places, deeper where drifts had formed against rock outcroppings. Atlas stopped abruptly near a shallow ravine. He barked once, sharp and directional, then angled down the slope carefully. Daniel followed. At the base of the ravine, partially shielded from wind but nearly invisible beneath snow, 2 figures huddled together. The first was a woman in her late 20s, face pale beneath a frost-stiffened hood. Her name, she would later say, was Nora Bennett, a wildlife photographer passing through the valley to document winter migration patterns. She was slight in build but stubborn in posture, clutching her camera bag even in near hypothermia. Beside her lay a man slightly older, broad-shouldered but limp with exhaustion. Daniel recognized him faintly as Tyler Green, a seasonal park ranger known for optimism bordering on recklessness. Tyler had underestimated the speed of the storm, confident he could outpace it. Confidence had nearly cost him his life. Atlas approached first, nudging Tyler's shoulder gently. The man stirred weakly. "Stay with me," Daniel ordered, voice firm but controlled. They secured both hikers in thermal blankets and attached harness lines. The ascent back toward the bluff was slow but steady. Lucas slipped once but regained footing quickly. Ethan maintained rear guard. Atlas never left Daniel's side, occasionally glancing back to ensure the volunteers held formation. When the cave entrance lights appeared through blowing snow, Daniel felt no surge of adrenaline, only steady confirmation. Inside, the chamber glowed with warm yellow light. Solar panels and generator hummed quietly together. Lily stood near the entrance table, eyes wide but not frightened. "They're back," she whispered. Dr. Reyes, who had volunteered again this season, moved forward immediately to assess the rescued hikers. Her movements remained efficient, hands warm and steady. Nora's pulse stabilized within minutes. Tyler coughed weakly but managed a grateful nod. Applause broke out softly among those gathered, not loud enough to disturb but strong enough to fill the chamber. Daniel stepped back from the center, allowing others to take over. Atlas shook snow from his coat and settled near the entrance once more, chest forward, eyes calm. Lily approached her father quietly. "You found them," she said, pride evident. "We did," Daniel replied. Outside, the storm continued, but it no longer carried the same threat. The cave stood firm, not as accident, but as design maintained through intention. Later that morning, when wind softened to a whisper, Daniel walked outside alone. Snow blanketed the valley in luminous white. The entrance to Bitterroot Winter Haven glowed warmly behind him, light spilling outward against stone. He placed a small wooden sign beside the reinforced corridor, one he had carved weeks earlier during quiet evenings by the hearth. And the letters were simple but deliberate. "For those who walk through storms, you are not alone." He stepped back to read it once. Atlas lay just inside the threshold, head resting on his paws, gaze outward but peaceful. Not merely a soldier's dog now. Not only guardian, a symbol. Daniel looked at the valley stretching below, at the faint outlines of town beyond drifting snow. He no longer felt like a man who had survived catastrophe. He felt like a builder. Inside, Lily laughed again, clear, bright, unbroken. The light from the cave shone steady against winter's white, and Daniel understood that survival had been only the beginning. Sometimes the storm is not the end of the story. Sometimes it is the beginning of who we are meant to become. Daniel did not set out to build a refuge. He only wanted to survive one terrible winter night. But survival, when guided by love and courage, can grow into something far greater. A shelter became a haven. Grief became purpose. Fear became leadership. In our daily lives, the storms may not look like snow and wind. They may come as loss, disappointment, financial pressure, broken relationships, silent anxiety, or nights when we feel completely alone. We may think we are simply trying to get through the day, but often God is shaping something deeper inside us. The cave in this story was not just stone. It was preparation. It was provision. It was a reminder that even when everything collapses around us, so there can still be a place of strength waiting ahead. Not by accident, not by luck, but by design. Maybe you are in a storm right now. Maybe you feel buried. Maybe you are walking through white uncertainty with no clear road in sight. Remember this. Sometimes you are not being pushed away from your old life. You are being guided toward a new purpose. The pain you survive may become the shelter someone else desperately needs. Look around your life. What can you rebuild? Who can you protect? Where can you bring warmth instead of fear? If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from and what storm you have overcome or are still walking through. Your story might encourage someone else more than you know. If you believe that God prepares a place for us even in the middle of winter, type amen in the comments. And if you want more stories of courage, loyalty, healing, and quiet faith, and subscribe to the channel and join this growing community. May God bless you, protect your home, guide your steps, and give you strength in every season. Even in the storm, you are not alone.